I don't want to unleash my scorching, middling takes until the reels are rolling. They show a Mandalorian ad before. Never mind. I'm just going to tell it on the podcast.
Save the story.
All right. Well, if we think that's enough time, maybe we come back from the break on Jan 6 with our Star Wars thing. And then if the whole time isn't taken up with infighting about
You're wrong.
About my opinions.
Last.
We could squeeze in Mandalorian there or the next week. Episode 187. We'll end on 188. That seems like an important number for some reason. Michael, you're the numbers guy.
187 on a cop.
No.
I can't say that
No,
lyric.
I think I have to just start this podcast over. Hello, welcome to We Were Gamers, episode 187. We're going to bleep all the things JJ said.
Kids, go look that lyric up and tell your parents.
Well then.
I see you decided to drop in our listener numbers.
Or an increase.
You know?
Probably not.
You never know these days. Welcome back. This is a podcast ostensibly about gaming. Personally, gentlemen, it's the end of the year. We have 2 full weeks-ish left. 1.5 weeks left as of the date of this recording.
8 days.
To finish out a decade. And I personally have too much junk in my house for people to come visit.
Yeah.
So, as per usual at the end of the year here, we have, or at least personally, I have very little time for gaming. So it's time to think about some stuff. Some stuff at the end of the year. But first, some housekeeping. Guys, JJ, hello.
Hello.
Michael, hello.
Hey, everybody.
We did not, and thank you for pointing it out, mention on the monitors episode whether or not we thought it was good to go 4K or not.
Okay. I have an opinion.
Okay.
I think it depends on what you're looking for, right? The answer with everything is always it depends. But in this case, right, how much are you spending on your video card? How much are you spending on the rest of your PC? Will you be able to actually hit 4K on anything other than like videos from Netflix or whatever?
Right. Pre-rendered stuff is not the same. So you may not be pre-rendering games at a high enough rate.
Right. And 4K is significantly more demanding than 1440p and much, much more significantly demanding than regular old 1080.
One other thing to note with 4K especially is that I'm sitting here looking at a 27-inch monitor, and 4K may give me slightly more definition than 1440p, but it's going to be in things like text and small little places on the screen that you'll notice extra definition. The PPI on a screen like a computer monitor is very already dense, right? So
right, because
your gains may not be that high.
Yeah, they're intended for you to sit, an arm's length away from the monitor or whatever. Mm-hmm. So they're already relatively, the image is dense already.
Yeah. And
eliminating that extra aliasing on the side of your font so that it looks like a smooth line instead of a little jagged line is nice, but also, you could just make the font smaller.
But I like my serifs crisp.
Hey, then maybe 1440 or maybe 4K is for you, Michael. Also, if you're like me and you want to drive 2 monitors all the time, you got to take a trade-off there.
Yeah. Yep. Good point. Do you run your second? I never asked you this. Do you run your second monitor all wonky tall like some people do?
So at work, I love it for that because at work I'm typically doing a lot of like text vertical stuff. And it's nice to just have a whole long, when these files are super long, thousands of lines, it's nice to be able to see more at once. and it's helpful for that. At home, I don't, because typically what I'm doing on that second monitor is I have a web page or a video or something open on there, and at that point, I want the widescreen aspect ratio.
Fair point. Follow up, second question. We actually got 2 on monitors, which is kind of crazy. Like, we've had some episodes where we get 1 on like the component, but then 2. No, you don't need a CRT.
God, no, please don't do that.
Unless
the only purpose to having a CRT is if you're trying to play like Smash Brothers Melee.
Well, yeah, but that's a television, right? So,
and that's exactly. Yeah. And then you don't need a computer for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Other housekeeping. Of course, we complained on the podcast last week that Warcraft 3 Reforged had not come out or had not been talked about in months. So January, JJ. Now it's January.
Hey, great. I still want to play it. I guess I should like get around to pre-ordering it before it comes out then.
Why? Okay. Why?
I don't know. Because I'm going to play it eventually.
I'm going to play it eventually too, but if they can't give me a release date, I'm not going to pre-order it.
I think they did now though, right?
But it's the same as this one. It was the end of the month, right? So they can move it to the next month by the middle of the month when it's not ready. Okay. Anyway,
it's nice that someone remembered to mention it, I guess.
Sure. I think it was us. Because we mentioned it, they made the announcement.
Well, Blizzard person, if you just aren't going to do it in January either, you could just say March, I mean, just
email us at podcasts.
Just be proactive on yourself, I'm just saying, save yourself the time of announcing it 3 times.
Yeah. Hey, while we're on the dour news train here, Jamie wrote in with a story about the FCC, JJ.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Hey, Michael.
Ooh. Yeah. What you got?
Yeah. Hey. Did you know that other than Google Fiber, you kind of just can fudge your numbers on your internet speeds?
Somehow that doesn't surprise me.
Mm-hmm. AT&T apparently did not get some very good scores last year, and in the current market of things we've complained about before on this podcast, this is a very small subsection of. We don't do a lot of world news, really, but we've had a general focus on internet neutrality and the FCC. They didn't like the scores the FCC gave them with the metrics that have been put in place to, make sure customers are getting served proper internet.
Right.
Or like they're doing what they say they're doing.
So they just sort of, complained a little bit. And the current people in charge were like, yeah, you know what? Self-regulate. Tell them what you're giving them.
Uh-huh.
How'd that go over?
About as well these new pork self-regulation rules are going to go. Or the 737 MAX. Oh!
The one that Boeing had to cancel because it kills too many people?
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful.
Yeah, self-regulation. Good idea. All right. I think that's it for housekeeping. Can we be done with it? Other than the housekeeping I still have to do in my physical home since we're hosting people.
The most holiday.
That's the adulting
chore
minute.
Right
that's
there.
Completely it. That's it. That's all of it.
Yeah.
Well, there's no time for that anymore, Andrew.
No, there's no time for that.
We need to talk about the end of this year, which is so rapidly approaching, we may not finish this podcast in time.
Good point. Thank you for keeping us on track.
Because I know we did this 2 years ago. I don't remember what we did last year because I wasn't there. So if one of you wants to remind me what we do near the end of the year on this podcast, someone please remind me.
Andy and I might have played Portal.
That sounds all right.
I don't quite remember.
No, yes, but no. Yes. We played Portal, but also we did a small episode called Our Year in Things or something like that. And basically we decided there's a lot of gaming podcasts out there. There's a lot of really good ones out there. And I can guarantee you, if you go listen to those good ones, they're telling you about their game of the year. And
games
there's about 20 games that come out every month, if not more, probably more. Yeah. I mean,
the stats on Steam would agree that it's like way more.
Let's just say A to a triple A. there's at least 20 a month.
Sure.
Right. And
Okay.
we won't try half those games ever. And we won't try half those games until years later sometimes when, like we much advertise on the show, you get value for your dollar. Because your time is valuable and you can only play so many games. So we don't feel like it's our thing to say what the game of the year was. Instead, JJ, last year we said what our experiences of the year were. Mine was getting a Switch, and Michael's was actually Into the Breach, and we combined them and we said you should buy a Switch and get Into the Breach on it.
I like it.
Mm-hmm. So this year we're going to add you back into the pile, my friend, and make you go first, put you on the hot seat and say, JJ,
wonderful.
What was your thing of the year?
So I suspect that the thing of the year that I would pick would probably overlap with the thing of the year Michael might pick.
I was wondering
So
if you were
I
if
had
you were gonna
already
shark me.
prepared a second thing of the year in case Michael picked mine.
I also have a backup.
All right. Wonderful. So then I am going to say one of the greatest games that I played this year. I really loved playing Bloodstained Ritual of the Night.
There we go.
Beautiful. Okay.
I had so much fun running around in that game, and I do mean running.
Yes.
The thing, it's a slight spoiler, I guess. Late in that game, you get a shard. And we maybe talked about it already, I think.
Yeah, and you don't have to. You have to go out of your way to find it.
Right. It's in a side room, and it involves you winning a race. And the shard you get is the accelerator shard. And using that thing is probably the most fun I've had in a video game this year. You run so ludicrously fast after you get that it is just, you are like a torpedo of doom speeding across that castle. It is great.
Not just running fast, but you do damage while you're using the shard. So it's not like you have to avoid enemies, you just run through them.
The torpedo of doom analogy holds true.
Exactly. Yes. Except you don't explode, they explode.
The best torpedo.
The best torpedo. And that game is great. And there are like multiple fun boss fights that are kind of off the hidden path or off the main path. Some of the side bosses are really fun. The boss fight against Iga that I think is DLC technically is really cool.
Yep.
And some of the other like post game kind of boss fights are all really, really sweet. So I can't say enough good things about that game. It is a kind of game that feels like they made, hey, this is Symphony of the Night, and they made another one of those, but then they also did all the stuff that game didn't do. And they're just like, what if we just made a whole bunch of just like random stuff for you to do in here? You don't have to, but you can, and it's there, and it's fun. So it's like, why not? Just a super fun time. And there's more DLC coming out for this game somehow. I think
they just sent out an email today, I think, the day that we're recording here, saying that, wishing everybody a happy end of the year and saying that they're working hard on all the DLC that's still outstanding.
Yeah,
they're adding in a whole second playable character as part of the DLC.
And I believe there are plans for a third playable character as well.
Crazy.
So they got all kinds of stuff lined up for.
And that was
next
PC
year
original release?
It came out on PlayStation 4, Xbox, and PC.
Everything. And Switch.
And then Switch, and had some problems.
Switch came a little later. Supposedly the problems are kind of fixed up, but it's still it doesn't look as nice as it does on the other ones.
But they at least fixed the major frame rate and hitching issues and all that sort of stuff.
It's better, I'm told.
Yes, supposedly.
That's good. At least they tried to address that sort of thing. Right on. Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. Quick, what's your backup?
Oh, my backup was a game that I don't think either of you played. It specifically is that moment at the end of Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice.
Okay.
When I beat that final boss, it was like the weight had been lifted from my shoulders and I was ascending to the pinnacle of gaming. Clearly, I was the god gamer now who could look down upon the masses and tell you that I had beaten that game.
The plebes.
Yes. And God, it's such a good feeling when you are doing the cool samurai stuff in that game. Man, it's rad.
Okay.
And it is. And you died so many times.
Shadows die 700 million times.
Oh God, so many times.
Nice. All right. Well, while I give Michael a minute to prep his backup, which he probably already has, I'll go next.
Yeah, I want to hear it.
All right. I had a lot of runners up this year, and I figured I can't do Smash. I've talked about it too much. Tetris 99 was on my last episode list for things Michael should get for his brand new Switch because it's free. $10, $20 a year if you want to play it online, $10 if you don't. So I guess it does cost money, but the benefits of playing online are maximal, I think. And playing it offline could be fun too. I think Tetris 99 is good. I thought about making it Battlegrounds since I've put in so many hours recently into Battlegrounds.
Also good.
Good, but not even released. Still technically in beta. A game that was released this year finally, Slay the Spire, I thought about for a little bit. Also a great game. Couldn't do it though. JJ, I'm surprised you didn't mention Apex Legends.
That's a fun game.
Yeah. Still, I had
like a really hot moment with that game, and then I just completely forgot about it.
It went cold. The thing about all those are, I like to check in on them a little bit, and I think I'm going to cool on Battlegrounds eventually. So I couldn't make any of them my thing of the year. I went off the beaten path a little bit. It's not a game.
Okay.
My thing of the year is Disney.
Okay.
Since the beginning of the year to right now, this moment, maybe even by the end of this podcast, I think every single week I talked about something Disney.
Probably influenced because you have two small children who probably enjoy watching and doing Disney things very frequently.
It's not improbable that that's partially the cause, but also they had a massive year. You know, Marvel.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Marvel had the end of their gigantic saga of films this year. Right. And
Endgame was a certifiable event for sure.
It was a massive countrywide thing, and it starts the beginning of a whole new, what would you call it, run of films for them, where they're going to start a new cinematic universe and
a new thing.
Yeah. Exactly. They launched Disney Plus successfully. It had one day of small hiccups, and the content that's gone up there. I mean, we'll talk about Mandalorian another time, but that's been fantastic. Having it around for the kids has been fantastic, and watching movies that I never thought I would try to track down again being on there, having other people ask to watch my Disney Plus when they were over. I
watched Bed Knobs and Broomsticks recently, so
that's a great movie.
They're clearly putting stuff on there.
They are putting stuff on there. I feel like the new addition to the Disney park I haven't seen yet, but Michael talked about fanatically for a little bit. They're
still so jelly,
dude. They had a massive year.
Yeah,
one for the record book, I think, and in the middle of even having had The Last Jedi flop on them super hard. So much so that they tried to salvage Solo into something else and ruined that movie too. You know what I mean?
Solo was last year, right?
I know Solo was last year, but Last Jedi was the year before, and they just seemed like they were floundering after that.
Yeah, the movie stuff was, or the big tentpole movie stuff seemed like it was in trouble.
To come back in 2019 with a vengeance, with everything they've done from parks to shows to everything. I look back at the year and I feel like for some reason, aside from the kids, which factors into it, obviously, Disney was a big part of my year that I couldn't escape in a good way. So my thing of the year this year was Disney. In specific, maybe Disney Plus, if you had to pick a thing, right? But Disney.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Michael, you're on the clock.
Yeah, so I think for mine, I'm gonna go handheld, and say that my backup thing of the year was playing through Link Between Worlds.
Oh man, what a good game, dude! That game
Yep.
rules so hard.
Yeah,
I
I
think
was it. The only thing that made me sad about it was that I had not played it sooner.
I think here we're gonna have to say next episode, little preview. There's gonna somehow be an epitaph to the 3DS. You know,
Say farewell.
You can say farewell in your own way to it by putting a bunch of 3DS games on your things of the decade, right?
True. Oh,
Yeah.
did we even say that's what we're doing? Spoiler.
We just did.
Guess we're doing it.
Next episode, things of the decade. All right, Michael. Well, that was your backup, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think that was definitely my backup. I think it was really cool to play a game that was set in a video game world that I know so well, having played through Link to the Past uncountably many times. And then to have them put a new twist on the play mechanic, the whole flattening yourself against the wall to reach different areas.
Did your DS while you were playing it feel long in the tooth?
No. And maybe just because I didn't have any other alternative as a handheld.
Okay.
Are you playing with the 3D on?
Yes, I was playing with the 3D on, but I don't think I had the 3D turned all the way up.
Just that little bit of depth.
Yeah, I think I usually put it somewhere around like 75%.
Not full Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Yeah.
That's a reference.
Yeah,
That's a Disney
turning
Park
it all the-
reference for those of you that weren't there 20 years
well
ago
done.
when that was open.
Well done.
Yeah.
I will say that I played the vast majority of A Link Between Worlds with the 3D turned off, and it is perfectly fine and playable.
It doesn't lose anything.
There are a couple puzzles, I think, where you have to like fall into holes, and it's a little hard to gauge like which floor is what.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the sideways puzzles are a little wonky, but once you figure out that's what you're supposed to do, you can kind of maneuver it. So it is totally playable. Like even if someone has a 2DS at home and you're thinking like, oh, well, this Link Between Worlds thing uses 3D, you could get through it. So it's absolutely worth playing even on the systems that can't do the 3D.
Right on.
Because it's really good. Really good.
I will say one other thing that I do wish is that they had included more in the wall combat, because they introduced it for the very end of the game.
Yeah, you basically never use it.
Right, then you're like, I want more of this.
Yeah, and in fact, in a lot of cases early on in the game, you kind of are just doing normal Zelda stuff, using the hook shot, doing the arrows, doing bombs. And if you remember that you have that power, you can cheese out a bunch of fights.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, meld into the wall, slide over to the side. Now I'm behind him. That kind of stuff. It's good. That game is good.
Right on. And so we end here with, did you want to say anything else about Bloodstained, since it's your thing of the year kind of too?
Did I have anything else? One of the things that I got, and this contrasts really well. So I just finished playing through Chasm, and I think I told you guys about this.
Yeah.
Kind of similar, procedurally generated, so it's not the same on any two playthroughs. And I liked that, but it doesn't have a new game plus mode. And I think that games like this really kind of scream for something else that makes, besides just the level design maybe changing in that case, but something else that makes you want to come back to it.
Can I start a counterpoint argument?
Sure.
Yeah.
I like that Castlevania style games have New Game Plus, especially when you fall in love with one of them. It's very valuable for people to be able to kind of still play their game, right? Like Super Smash Brothers, that story mode had a new game plus mode, and I liked it enough to play it again. Obviously, right? Chasm. Sounds like a college dorm room. Chasm. Had not having one. That game was what? A couple dollars more?
Well, I'm not sure because I wound up getting Chasm for free.
Ah, okay. Point stands, I think. Maybe certain developers benefit more from saying this is the game and moving on. Right?
Sure.
Instead of trying to
see that.
sink
there
a
is
lot of time into a new game plus that maybe a third of their base will play, especially for somebody that's not building a Bloodstained.
There is definitely a market for people who want shorter games. I mean, I think we could even be that market. You know, we don't have a ton of time to play. What if you could get an entire experience of a game in 6 to 8 hours? You know, that doesn't feel that awful necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I think there is room for both, right? And if they don't want to, if they want to just say, hey, here's the game, these are what you can do with these powers, go for it. Okay, that's their choice, right? And if they want to add a mode that lets you run around, you know, in some new game plus type fashion, that was their choice too. And I don't think either are wrong. You know, just like it's different kinds of things for different people, right? You're totally right that probably not everyone is going to engage with the new game plus. I didn't engage with new game plus in Bloodstained. I just kept reloading my end game save and then going off and screwing around in other parts of the castle before killing the last boss. So, you know, it's just it's a question of what kind of, do they want this to be a game you're going to play a ton?
Yeah.
And maybe they don't, and that's fine.
But I think we've debated the new game plus on this podcast a couple times before, and the values of it, I think you guys have definitely won the arguments on in terms of the having them in the game. But sometimes I wonder about, specifically in Chasm's case, because it's kind of a small development, right? Whether they just benefit from saying, you know, it's not. And
I saw a comment in one of the forums from one of the developers who said exactly that, you know, they had some other things that they weren't totally writing off a new game plus mode, but they had some other development things that they wanted to focus on first, and then they would assess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that's totally fair. You know, in life, everything is a trade-off, right? If they're working on New Game Plus, they're not working on adding that extra enemy or the, you know, 15th room or the 10th boss or whatever.
Or their next game.
Yeah. So, you know, there's all kinds of stuff. And I think that's totally fair.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So let's see. We had Bloodstained, The Torpedo of Doom, Disney, The Mouse Returns,
The Mouse of Doom,
and Zelda: Link Between Wall Fighting. That's our things of the year. And with a backup of Sekiro, right?
Yeah, that was my backup there.
I don't know how to fit all these together as easily as last year. This didn't work out like it did before.
You know, diverse experiences here.
Yeah, I like it. That's pretty awesome. Well, should we dip our toe in the pool of the most diverse experiences and say that
the discourse calls to us?
Maybe people who don't want spoilers for the newest Star Wars film should turn this podcast off now, and we enjoyed listening and talking with you this year. And we'll see you next week.
Yeah,
for our things of the decade.
Have a nice time, y'all. But these opinions are about to rise.
All right, you got your last warning. 3, 2, 1.
We're gonna spoil the crap out of Rise of Skywalker, everyone. This is your last warning.
This is the yes, yeah. Rise of Skywalker, ROS, as it's become known, released on Friday. Much to the elatement of many, including those who were waiting to smear it for whatever reasons they were waiting to smear it.
Guys, this movie reviewed very badly.
It did. And considering how the last one reviewed, I think I'm just done with reviews.
The reviews of the last one were pretty good. And then after the fact kind of settled like lower than, like, not super high, but not middling. The first one, the Force Awakens, right, was basically like loved by critics all over the place. And then this one was not.
Yeah.
Wow.
I just am done listening to other people's opinions. I really am, which is kind of funny to say since we're talking about our opinions on a podcast. But that's what we are doing because we're here to talk to each other, and that's kind of it. And my God, I'm
so curious to know what you guys think.
I don't understand how they could trash this and not have trashed the last two. You know what I mean? The same people.
I was curious, so I pulled up because I had seen going into Thursday what the critics score was.
I avoided everything, including that.
Yeah. I looked at it intentionally because I knew I wasn't going to go for a few days, and I wasn't going to avoid it. It was low.
Yeah. So on RT, the critics had given Rise of Skywalker a 56%. The audience score at the moment is sitting at 86%. And those numbers, looking back, are almost an exact flip of where Last Jedi was.
Yeah.
The critics gave Last Jedi 91%, and the audience gave it 43%.
Garbage fire of a movie.
I rewatched Last Jedi right before I went and saw Rise of Skywalker.
Still a garbage fire? Question mark?
It's not great. The thing I will say about that movie compared with Rise of Skywalker is that movie at least took its time. This movie didn't have any time for you to do anything. We want to have a character moment? No, sir, we don't. Let's get along. Hey, here's the MacGuffin. Great, next thing. Oh, Chewie's dead. Nope, next thing. Oh, here's the next thing. You can't take more than 10 seconds to breathe before they have to jump to another plot point.
I'm going to just throw this out there early because this was a note for later, but maybe you shouldn't interrupt the middle of your trilogy to let somebody direct a completely unrelated fucking movie in the middle of it. Bleep.
Oh yeah, dude. Nah. Fully
maybe you have to plan your movie out in advance, your trilogy, and not fit it into two movies, so you could just do a random one in the middle. Because this is two movies crammed into one.
Oh, absolutely.
It is. It's because they had to walk back all the stuff, and he's like, "No, we're not doing that."
All they had to do,
reset it up.
All they had to do at the end of the very first movie was kill Luke Skywalker, and they could have made this one into two movies.
Disregarding what they should have done, right? They could have ended The Last Jedi with Palpatine being like, "Oh man, damn, my plan to use Snoke didn't work. Guess I got to do it myself."
Yeah, maybe we should do an explicit content warning here because, problems. Come on,
they would have solved so many problems just right there.
Yeah,
they literally introduce the MacGuffin bad guy in the scrolling text. The only thing that's ever been introduced in the scrolling text,
I'm gonna ruin your day.
Was trade negotiations.
I'm gonna ruin your day.
It's a menace.
Are you ready for me to ruin your week?
Yeah,
you're gonna have the worst Christmas of your life. They didn't introduce it in the scroll, buddy. They introduced it in Fortnite.
So I heard about this, but I didn't look into it because I didn't really care enough.
Also he was in the trailers. So
he was in the trailers. That's fine. But the actual thing that happens in the scroll with the transmission to the universe and stuff, there was like a full-on 20-minute animated cutscene inside of Fortnite in which this happens.
That's pretty shitty.
Wow.
Yeah. Pretty crazy. Let's talk.
I definitely did not even know that.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that happens in this movie that just kind of didn't get resolved or was resolved somewhere else. Like Lando at the end of it. Did you realize he's talking to his daughter?
Is she actually, though?
Sure is.
How do you know that?
Because the book says so.
That doesn't mean anything.
She's getting her own spin-off book.
Okay, I don't know.
I mean,
I don't know if
I
buy
made
that.
I made that assumption.
I made that
she
assumption
actually is.
too. As
they,
a
they
Yeah.
kind of really heavy-handed.
as watching the film, I was into the. We're gonna have to get to the end of the beginning of this again, because I actually kind of liked this movie quite a bit, but I also have a lot of complaints about this movie.
So hold on though. I want to hear like what is your overall impression? Because like I feel like I'm kind of meh on it. It had a lot of like really great emotional moments at the end. The entire first half of the movie felt like it was taking drugs or something, so it was moving way too fast. But otherwise, like I was generally okay with it. I didn't come away like wowed or anything.
I would call myself bemused by it and assume it was the maybe best of the three, probably. At least certainly the most aspirational in terms of its plot.
100% agreed about that. Sure.
Yeah. I liked this one. I think it got back to like the humor and the fun that made some of the original movies so good. I feel like one of the drawbacks is that it had to do a lot of course correcting.
Yeah.
Part of what made the
Undoubtedly.
beginning of it feel so frantic.
There's a definitely, and notwithstanding the death of one of the Carrie Fisher, right? Like, who I assume was supposed to make it through this whole film.
Honestly, I think they handled as that could have gone. They did a pretty good job of not making it terrible.
And it just causes a lot of rewriting, I'm sure, right? Like, that lightsaber was definitely not supposed to be handed to her by her picking it out of a rock.
Yeah.
Like, there's an emotional scene that was supposed to happen with that lightsaber that they never got to shoot, I'm sure. And doing a whole, actually, by the way, she was in Jedi training. You know, that's another scene they never got to do where, you know, Carrie Fisher gets to tell her, actually, I trained as a Jedi and I tried to prevent my son becoming a Sith by not being a Jedi, you know?
Yep.
Right.
So there's a lot of that stuff that's a mess. And there's a lot, like you said, of backtracking. That's a mess. There's a lot of mess, but I walked out of the first one being like, why did I have to watch another Death Star? I walked out of the second one being like, hyperdrive suicide, huh? And then this one I was like, okay, cool, we got a Star Wars movie out of these three.
Right. I think the only criticism, well, I don't know, the only criticism, there's a lot of criticism.
Dude, I still have more.
A criticism you can level at the first one is that they just did A New Hope again, right?
Yes, it is like
shot for shot.
You got beat. And so you got a Star Wars movie, right?
Sure.
You literally got the archetypal Star Wars movie.
But almost however farcical.
Exactly. Of course. And that's the problem, right? They adhered too close to the formula. And so in the second one, they're like, burn the formula to the ground.
Everybody hated that, so let's just start over. And then they're like, everybody hated that, let's start over again.
Yeah, it was clearly a case where they got bit by the fact that they did not have a 3-arc movie planned in advance.
And they should have, because they said
absolutely they should have.
They said they did, and it clearly didn't happen. Right? Like, anyway,
someone had it in their head. They didn't do a good job of conveying it on the screen.
Look, you want more random stuff that got dropped from this movie? Finn never tells her what the thing is in the sand, in the quicksand that appeared out of nowhere.
Yeah.
They fall off the skiff. There's no quicksand. The scene ends. Now they're in quicksand.
Continuity. And
then Finn says, I gotta tell you something. Oh, never mind. I'm never gonna say it for the rest of the movie.
I'll tell you later.
I'll tell you later that, by the way, thank God we retconned the fact that Finn wasn't force sensitive.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He had all those feelings, you know.
Yeah.
Throughout the movie, those feelings.
Honestly, I mean, it's one of the things that at the end of the first movie, you're like, okay, so anybody can just hold a lightsaber and use it now. Great. Cool. And then in this one, they're like, no. It's cool. Finn's attuned to the Force. And he holds a lightsaber again.
Yeah.
Oh, man. But this movie should have been called, I think, Star Wars, Why Do Stormtroopers Bother with Armor?
Someone made that comment as we were walking out of the theater. Like, why did the stormtroopers even bother with armor?
You think if they just didn't wear it, they'd probably cut their losses in half because they'd be more agile.
Well, what's hilarious to me is that
it's for the intimidation factor only. There's no other reason.
I like that Finn
I wouldn't
is suddenly
wear the
a
plastic.
crack shot without the armor.
Yeah, he doesn't have a helmet blocking his view.
Sure, yeah.
I love that. Oh, man. I can't even say it. It's in The Mandalorian.
Oh, no, you can't talk about that. Sorry.
Oh. Michael, you know what I'm talking about, though.
I think.
All right, no side conversations. Let's keep it on the point. Look, there's enough to talk about with this movie. You don't have to talk about that too. I will say, for a movie that got panned so hard, there was a lot of like really emotional stuff. I think scenes that were actually good, and even I complained about it moving too fast. But there were parts where it was like, this is a nice character moment here between Ben and his dad on the waves. You know, kind of getting his forgiveness out of what happened there. And that was a great scene.
And
I
it
believed
exactly echoed the scene in episode 7.
Right.
I know what I need to do, but I don't know that I'm strong enough to do it.
Right.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. It was a great scene.
Yep. And there's a lot of that that may feel rushed for other reasons. Chewie's breakdown when Leia passes away. Finally, he gets, to be sad about people dying.
Yeah, that was a good moment.
I really wish that there had been a story reason why 3PO couldn't get his memory back, because his scene where he says, "I'm taking one last look at my friends," makes you kind of realize, like, that dude's been in 9 movies. Not just 3PO, but Anthony Daniels also.
3PO was literally invented in episode 1.
Yeah.
And that actor and that robot has been through it all, and, like, that was actually somewhat poignant. Then they gave time to the fact that they were going to wipe him, even though they had that little rat thing making jokes the whole time. Whatever.
Babu Frick.
Babu Frick, which I don't entirely mind until he shows up later.
It was an easy laugh.
In the gratuitous fan service scene. But
yeah.
You didn't like seeing Wedge again?
What?
Was it supposed to be Wedge? I didn't know, because it was just generic old guy.
No, it is
Old
Wedge
guy that they
Antilles.
show is Wedge Antilles.
It is the actor.
I understand that.
Yes.
However, it looks like generic old guy to me.
Sure,
I guess you give them the benefit of the doubt and say that he had left the Alliance at some point and was retired, and that's why he wasn't working with General Organa, but it kind of feels like Wedge Antilles would probably have still been involved.
Mm-hmm. You're bringing in some things.
I'm bringing in stuff from the outside, but he was in his old X-Wing outfit, which is why I was kind of like, why didn't they just put him in like smuggler's clothes? Because I guess people wouldn't have recognized him.
Yeah, that's exactly why.
But
I saw him in the thing and I didn't recognize him.
I would have recognized him. But I did like seeing Wedge Antilles. The whole like, hey, you were blown up on the planet girl coming back was a little odd. And then you get Babu Frick popping up. The reason maybe that's kind of like gratuitous there is that there's just no stakes, right? There's no stakes in that fight. You can tell.
I don't know. Spoiler alert: the good guys win at the end of a movie. Like,
yeah,
is that like, in that sense, there are no stakes to anything.
There's no stakes because they had the whole fleet blown up the last movie.
Yeah, that's why they had to go have Lando recruit literally everyone or something.
Yeah.
Like, why didn't they just have Lando go do that 10 movies ago and have an army? Like, what is this whole thing, man?
I don't know. There's some definite. Well, let's take some of the, before we run out of time, let's take some of the things that people are upset about online for a sec.
Okay, yeah.
Rey's parents.
I get why people are upset about it. I think it's kind of lame to have made her the daughter of Palpatine. Granddaughter, sorry. The story could have worked equally as well as she is the chosen one from nowhere, right? She is the magical one who was going to unify the Sith or whatever legend they wanted to make up. That same story would have been equally as good as she's his granddaughter. So I don't. I understand that complaint. I'm not like particularly mad that they did this. It's just that I think that they could have just not done it and saved themselves time. If the movie was too full already, that would have been an easy cut for me anyway. But you guys feel like it was good? Did they need to do that?
I don't know when they made up the Force dyad thing, if they made it up for this movie or not.
I was curious about that too. Apparently, it gets introduced in episode 7.
Okay,
I'd have to go back and rewatch it because I definitely don't remember that.
I feel
Maybe this is the reason her and Kylo could have Force fights and talks when they're God knows where.
Pass lightsabers through space.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I didn't mind that. They had established that they could do that.
Yeah,
I
didn't mind it. Yeah,
no, I liked it. They'd been setting it up for a while.
Yeah, but the idea that those two are some sort of like 2-for-1 thing in the Force, it kind of almost makes sense that they had to tie in some sort of relationship to the Skywalkers somehow, without her being like Luke's kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
They could have been cousins or something, but instead, I don't know what you're left with. She can't be many of the other famous Jedis.
I mean, but who was Luke, right? Luke was Vader's kid. Who was Vader? Vader was just some kid they found on a planet, So at the end of the day, there was already like a chosen one myth. It could have been the same. Anyway, we could talk about whatever it could have been. This is what they did.
Yeah, I don't. And that kind of, leads into the Skywalker thing, right? Like,
right.
She's a Skywalker because they chose her to be a Skywalker or something.
She chooses for herself to be.
Right at the end, she's like, "Oh, what's your family name?" "Oh, I choose to be Skywalker."
Mm-hmm.
Which, okay. She earned it at the end of that one. I guess all the other ones were dead, so might as well be her.
Okay, so we seem lukewarm on the Palpatine thing on your guys' end. I kind of liked it a little bit.
I didn't dislike it, but yeah.
I think it worked for them to set the characters up as foils of each other, right? The child of the light side who embraces the dark, and the unwitting child of the dark side who becomes a Jedi.
It's currently it's like a yin yang thing. Maybe it feels cheap to a lot of people because Palpatine pops up in this movie.
Yeah, I think if they had done, more with Palpatine in the Last Jedi or the movie before, maybe it would feel more earned. But it sort of just felt like surprise.
Right, we're putting him in so that we can make Rey his granddaughter.
Right,
okay.
Literally, yeah, that's what it felt like. But
all right. Well,
what are the other hot
Palpatine
takes?
being in the film? You guys? Yes? No?
I was good with that. I mean, he always kind of was the ultimate villain, right? For 6 movies.
Yep.
Sure.
So the fact that it comes back to him again in the end was it felt like it offered to have him finally defeated. It felt like it offered good closure.
Do we believe the weird cultist planet with Rey killing millions of people in the arena there?
They were bad people, so
you know what? I
in
think
Star Wars, it is okay to kill bad people, as we've seen by blowing up the ships with millions of people on them. Also,
I think my issue with that is just the ask from the average audience member who doesn't have necessarily the same depth of Star Wars knowledge of, hey, there's a planet full of these people called the Sith. They're really bad. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Without knowing, because they don't introduce anything about the Sith in this movie. They just expect you to know it.
Or honestly, in either of the other 2 movies,
where they could have or should have
less in 7 and 8.
Exactly. Yes.
7 could have stayed what it was, which is not great, but it could have stayed that way if 8 had done the lifting. Much like
Yeah, if they
Empire
had
Strikes Back did for the original trilogy.
if they had made it so that it was really obvious that Snoke was working for the Emperor, right? In 8, that could have been a whole thing. But
instead of in this movie, you seeing a bunch of Snoke clones
yeah.
in a tank.
Yeah, like if you'd introduce that in 8.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Uh-huh.
Kind of literally the same thing I said about it before, but Palpatine was clearly put here to correct a bunch of other stuff. I didn't mind that they did it with him. It was just they could have not done it also, but they had already killed the guy that they were going to use for this purpose in 8. So then got to walk it back somehow.
I kind of feel like maybe that was the plan in the long run. It just wasn't done right.
Yeah.
Other things that people are mad at. We already talked about Lando's end scene. Talked about so we said you guys are good with her being Skywalker at the end of the movie?
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
All the other ones are dead. Who's to say no?
I mean, who's to say they wouldn't say yes even if they weren't dead?
I think they did say
exactly.
yes. They force ghosted and they nodded at her.
That's true.
It's like the end of Return of the Jedi where Anakin and Obi-Wan show up and wave at Luke,
I love the payoff of staring at that stupid staff for 3 movies and going, why is the tip of it a lightsaber? And then at the end of the 3rd movie, they're like, it was a lightsaber the whole time. She turned it into a lightsaber, guys. And you're just like, yeah, we got it. Like the first time we saw the staff,
one.
I saw the nozzle. All right. How did Finn know that the old X-Wing was Red 5?
It still had a call transponder.
Yeah, it's still transmitting the same thing.
Oh, okay. Got it. All right.
The better question is, how did technology not move forward in 30 years so that they could actually recognize it?
Well, but don't they do that same thing in, is it New Hope or Empire Strikes Back, where they use the stolen code and the guy on the Death Star makes a comment, it's an old code, but it still checks out.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, they were going to flag it and pull him in, and then Vader let him go, remember?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So they knew. It wasn't like they got away with it.
Yeah.
Man, there's a lot of stuff, but I think the biggest one that people are upset by starts with, do you believe Ben Solo's redemption?
Yeah. I think that is... I think whether you buy that scene...
We were always headed there.
The question is either you buy that scene with him and Han, or you don't, and then that kind of makes or breaks the rest of the movie, I think.
I think you had to have bought in earlier. I think you had to have bought in at the end of 8 when he invites Rey to help him basically tear down the old order and build something new.
Yeah,
right.
I mean,
because he takes over as supreme leader, but if you bought in at the end of 8 that he wants to build something different, then you could believe that he's willing to make this switch to tear down the old way.
Rey had been saying as far back as 7 and 8 that she sensed good in him, and she kept sensing it throughout movie 8 and throughout this movie too. So, finally paying off the long awaited scene. I mean, I bought it, right? So I thought it worked. I could totally see an alternate version where I didn't buy it, but I thought it worked.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we've been watching him for 3 movies. In general, Ben Solo seems to just stalk her across the galaxy. Much of the time where he's unwanted. How do you feel about the end? How it all comes to a head. Rey gives it all. She dies. He brings her back with the same power, right? That she used to save his life. And then they kiss, right?
Yeah.
that one has gotten maybe the most flack aside from her parentage being Palpatine on the internet.
Yeah, I don't know. The kiss wasn't earned, so I get that. I don't know. The like life for a life stuff I was cute, I guess, in that you knew they didn't want her to die because she's the Luke Skywalker of this thing, and he's the kind of like the Darth Vader analogy, so he had to die, I guess, to fill that role. So I wasn't mad about the resolution there. Yeah, I don't know. It wasn't like my favorite on-screen kiss ever.
It I guess to me it felt just sort of like he was saying goodbye. And that's how I read it.
Mm-hmm.
They'd kind of been force flirting for like 3 movies, I guess.
Again, feels like maybe bad. It was a one-sided situation.
Certainly. Yeah, it's kind of bad.
So you're left with, did she make the choice, right? And if so, was it felt maybe like it wasn't like a we're in love sort of thing, but more like a I know this is the end for you kind of thing. She didn't like cry about him going,
right?
You know?
Yeah.
I think the funniest comment I saw about this is, I'm surprised people are getting so worked up about Rey and Ben kissing when episode 4 literally has incest in it.
Yeah, not wrong.
How mad do you think all those people that were shipping Poe and Finn are?
I don't know what I think about Poe and anyone. It just really was with the walking back that they did, they also walked back a lot of Rose, and
Rose is gone.
Her role in the movie basically was like, "Hello, side character."
Yeah,
hey, I'm surprised she didn't bite it.
Bye.
Yeah. So, and since she and Finn basically spent the entire last movie together, right? Since they were walking her back, now they needed to do something with Finn romantically because they needed to have romance in the movie for whatever reason. Yeah, I don't know. Finn felt like a character in search of like a storyline, and he kind of found one there finally at the end. But man,
he just kind of ran around behind Rey like a puppy.
A little bit, yeah.
I gotta go to the Death Star to chase her over there. Why?
Yeah, exactly. Like she clearly showed she didn't need him. What was he doing there? Yeah.
There's a lot of mess.
I want to know where Ben Solo found that working TIE fighter in that ruined Death Star.
In the wreckage of the...
Man, that is lucky.
Yeah, he was pretty late to the party. It probably took him a while.
I mean, you must have. You saw how big that wreck was.
Yeah.
I liked that part. A lot of people complained about them going back to the Death Star. And I'm like, they made a Death Star for the first movie, and you're complaining about walking into the ruins of the other one with the themes that are happening in this film. I
liked it too.
I enjoyed the scene where Kylo comes back to his like meeting of generals and was like, after all these terrible things that have happened and all the losses and that stupid Starkiller base, they all look at that guy and he's like, what do you mean?
I think standout moment of the film, though, was General Hux getting aced.
I was just
what was the other general? The other general going like, "Oh, they made you, huh? Bam! Right in the chest. We found the spy." It was good.
That though the moment for me, and this was something that I just it popped into my head, and I had to try really hard not to start laughing because it was kind of the climactic moment of the movie. But when Palpatine has his line at the very end, he's firing the Force lightning at Rey, and he says something along the lines of "I am the Sith." There's a beat in there where Rey's gathering her strength, and my head just fills in, "And I am Iron Man."
I had a similar beat.
Oh my god.
I had a very similar beat when he said all the Sith live in me, in the movie. He told Ben that all the voices he'd ever heard were Palpatine, just different versions of his voice. And then Rey starts to hear she first hears Obi-Wan, then she hears Luke, then she starts to hear all the Jedi, Mace Windu. And all I could think about was that scene from Robot Chicken where Darth Vader aces the Gungan, what's his name?
Jar Jar.
Yeah, he aces Jar Jar Binks, who comes back as a Force ghost, and all he can say over and over is Annie. And he bugs him at all hours of the night and stuff like that. That's all I could think about was like, she's gonna have all the Sith and all the Jedi voices in her head the rest of her life. Man,
I thought for a minute the way that was going to end was she was going to kill him and have all the Jedi and all the Sith together. Balance,
huge,
literally bring balance.
Huge
balance,
Force ghost fight.
Or no, just, the whole point about is bringing balance to the Force. Well, if all of them are together in one person, balance.
Yeah.
But
one would argue, right?
I like the ending, I can't be mad about it.
And one would argue in a better version of this trilogy, when Anakin was told he brings balance to the Force, it's kind of true, right?
Yeah.
He has a grandson that forces Luke to train the woman that will eventually bring balance to the Force. And you could have rewritten it a lot of different ways that it kind of works out, but it kind of worked. I don't know. Is it
I think a lot of the prophecies in Star Wars you got to look at real off to the side and not directly at. Otherwise, they don't stand.
They call it
squint out of the corner of your eye.
They called it the Skywalker saga. Do we think it's that? Do we think it's the 3PO saga or the Palpatine saga?
Well, it's certainly not the Palpatine saga. He's only in one movie.
No. The whole thing, all 9 movies are called the Skywalker saga.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I think it's the 3PO saga.
Yeah, okay.
Or R2.
Is he in the first one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because he and Anakin find their way onto the space station.
That's right, and he flies around in the Naboo starfighter with him.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. All right, so it's the droid saga.
Clearly, the only character that survived the entire thing was R2-D2, so he's the best one.
Unscathed, yeah. No, he gets blown up in...
Well, he gets blown up several times.
Yeah, but they always patch him up.
The real virtue is not being, living forever through the Force. It's just being a droid, so they can just repair you.
Yeah, odd that not a lot of Force people tried to help her out, huh? Anyway, I don't know. I come away with it with having gone through the other 2 movies, so better.
If I came to one cinematic conclusion after this weekend, it's that you guys should go see Knives Out.
I keep hearing about this film, and it did better in China than Star Wars did this weekend. I'm just going to throw that out there.
I think there's something to be said about coming away from a movie like really enthused, and I did not come away from this movie super enthused, but I wasn't like mad like I have been sometimes. So, but then also like, people are really loving Knives Out. So,
and look at it this way, guys. It could have been worse. It could have been Cats.
People were enthused about that, but in a different way.
Very different reason.
I've never heard of a day one patch for a movie before, but they've done it.
They have the technology now.
Yep.
Special edition is released at the same time while it's still in theaters.
Studio edition. The director got fired. There's no director's cut anymore.
Woof.
All right.
I think you mean meow.
I mean meow. Thank you.
Why couldn't you save that to the end? Oh, I can't even do our social media after such a good ending. All right.
If people want to get at us, we're podcast@weweregamers.com. Send an email there. We will read it and talk about it on the air. We are on social media @weweregamers on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, wherever fine podcasts show up. You search for this, we'll be there. And on YouTube, search for We Were Gamers on there. Give it a subscribe. All these podcasts are on there. And they're sorted. It's helpful.
All right. Previews. Next week, things of the decade, and we're at last component class ever.
Whoa.
Not last podcast, just the section of that. And it's not, that might not strictly be true, but the last for building this particular computer. So that'll be our last episode of the year. And then we want to do more Star Wars discussion, despite what it sounds like. So look forward for that in the new year, because things will be coming down the pipe.